hope this is the panel you're here for. Is that the panel I'm running? My name's Tora. Nice to meet you all. Who's here because you know who I am and you value my advice as a person who exists in this world? Don't raise your hand. I know how you feel about my advice. That's what I expect. I don't run a blog. I don't put my GMing online, but I've been reading RPG books for games that I really like to run, but I haven't played for about 20 years. And I've been playing, starting with D&D, for about 15 years. And I've been GMing my own games, starting with Dark Heresy, for 12 years. Which, if you know Dark Heresy, you know that's exactly how long Dark Heresy has existed in the world. I was really excited about it. Now, that's a drop in the bucket, considering D&D has existed for 46 years. I'm a baby GM, according to those, one-third of the time that it's existed, I've been GMing. But that's to my benefit. That means there's GMs who have been doing it for about 30 years before I even thought about starting doing D&D. And that's a mountain of advice that exists and is available to me. That's great. They have advice on how players are going to react in certain situations, what adventures are tons of fun to run, what apps you can organize your games with, what online RPG group forming website is the best one. And I mean, most advice on the internet is not actually really good advice, but there's hope. This panel is not giving good advice on how to be a GM or DM or anything like that. This is how to vet advice that you find. There will probably also be my own advice, but I don't think I'm going to tell you anything that you can't find on the internet by Googling how be good GM, because let me tell you, most GMs share one brain. We think things are good, and that's kind of how groupthink works. When you have a lot of people looking at kind of the similar same information, they're going to think the same things are good. And they're probably not wrong. Trust your instincts. Advice number one. It's not supposed to be advice, it's supposed to be facts, but that's advice in my opinion. Setting expectations. I forget things, so I might repeat stuff a lot, reference my notes. I'm thinking about you. I want you to have the best possible panel. Let me reference my notes. What did I not cover that was supposed to be in this introduction? Oh yeah. One thing that will impede your good advice getting is how your brain works. Your brain maybe wants to sabotage your life, but if you know how brain work and how brain think about things, you can circumvent and maybe trick it into doing a better thing. Because when your brain gets used to doing one thing, then it's like, this is what we're doing now. This is my survival instinct. What else? All right, identifying good advice. My favorite personal pieces of bad advice. Why they're bad, maybe how to use them to be good. We're going to have questions after that section. And then we got a lot of people, so we're going to roundtable. I've got places that I've found good advice, but so have you, hopefully, found good advice. And it's going to be different advice than I have found, hopefully, because our life experiences are different, maybe. I saw a whole lot of new people come in. Good morning, friends. You look pretty bright-eyed. Who has a seat next to them, just so that some of the standing people can maybe sit down? All right, yeah, feel free. File yourselves in. We'll take a minute so we can reread my notes. I spent too much time asking people, so who plays D&D? At the beginning, I got everything. That's not true. I'm way more prepared than that. I'm an over-preparation GM. I write everything down. And then if we don't use it, that's fine. Hands up if you got a seat next to you, just so people can sit down. Try to make sure you can see this. I mean, this is only so useful. I'm gonna say some of what's on that screen, but you don't need to see me either. I'm just gonna sit here and talk. I might stand. Flexible. So who here is already a GM? Nice. Of you GMs, or prospective GMs, it doesn't matter if you have experience or not. Who's playing a game that's not D&D? Small number. That's okay. All the other DMing panels that are out this weekend are actual DMing panels, Dungeon Master. I play a lot of Shadowrun and Dark Heresy. My examples might come from Shadowrun and Dark Heresy. I just play D&D, so it's fine. Who's seen the Goblins and Growlers panel yesterday? What did you think of it?
Am I the only one who saw it?
A couple people raise their hands, just shout your answer, What did you think about it? What did you think of the way they give advice? The advice that they gave? Yeah.
The way they gave it entertainingly.
True, and that's important. You want people to pay attention when you're talking. You also want to, especially when it's a static advice source. Sorry, we're going to talk about static advice source. Let me actually move on. What makes advice bad? I got notes on this. Most advice is bad. And that has a lot to do with how advice is sought. When you go somewhere, is the person you're asking for advice, someone you want advice from, is it someone who actually knows about the thing you want to ask about? Are you walking up to them and saying, just give me one piece of advice that will help me improve? How does that person know what you need to improve? That kind of one-liner advice might sound peppy and snappy, it's something prepared for off the cuff, but is it what you need to improve? Are you asking for advice on something that you've already made a decision on what you're going to do? Are you actually open to that feedback, or do you just want validation? Think about how you are as the advice seeker. Now, there's also the advice giver side. Advice is a dance. There's multiple, maybe more than two people, depending on if you're in a forum or actually chatting with a person. Is the advice giver coming from a place of emotional intelligence, self-awareness, restraint, diplomacy, patience, careful, thoughtful, whatever? Probably not. I mean, it's not if you're going on the internet. They don't know you as a person. They will probably value their personal experience a lot. Internet communication doesn't really well lend itself to careful, specific advice. Going back and forth, asking for clarifying information. If you're in a forum, I mean, it could take weeks if you really hammer out exactly what the context is. And you need to be advice for your game that weekend. It's just not conducive to that kind of specific advice giving. If the advice you're seeking is from maybe a podcast or a blog post that's static, it's not considering your personal situation, it's usually the advice giver's personal situation. And their story and specific table is going to be different from yours. That does not mean you should completely discount the advice. That means it's not specific and personal, and you should vet that. I'm going to say the word vet a lot. Sorry. I've only got one word that means that. But that advice is not bad. That doesn't make advice bad. Just because communication is difficult does not inherently make the advice bad. That's why spaces might not be conducive to good advice giving. But as long as you are brain aware that space not conducive to advice giving, you can work around that. You know maybe what other information you need to provide. This person on the internet does not know that my table is old friends and we've been playing for 30, not my table, obviously, 30 years, example. And when we say this person is always late, we just mean that is who they are as a person. And I might be asking for the advice of how to start my games on time, but that's a piece of background information that maybe you need to know. Yeah, that's not why advice bad. That's why space make bad, hard advice. Every now and then I'm going to talk like caveman, just simple words. Why use many words when few words do good job? Aw, the jokes are good, excellent. Even if it's polite laughter, I appreciate it. So what? What makes advice bad? Advice false? Yes, that obviously if the advice is false, then it's not good advice. But how do you identify that the advice being given to you is false? Practice, experience, hearing the person talk about things. We're people that have experience living and talking to and communicating with people. If you think in your brain, this sounds like an exaggeration, it's misleading, it's deceptive, it's wrong, just from my experience, listen to that instinct. Feel free to follow up and say, you say you always do X. You always do X? Could you explain? Tell me about your group, maybe, so that I can maybe relate it to my table in a more useful way. Asking for more information, no advice giver should ever be super defensive and being like, oh, if you don't trust my advice, then why am I bothering to give it to you? They're not the one that needs to feel the validation or whatever you have. The advice receiver needs to be confident in the advice being given. And any thoughtful advice giver, I don't know if I'm using the right words either, any thoughtful advice giver is going to be respectful of that. So if someone is not respectful of you saying, hey, can you maybe give me more information? Maybe just cut your losses. So yeah, advice false, not good, bad. The advice is not concrete or actionable. We do have some more chairs in here if you guys wander in. It's fine. There's some in the front. No? Feel free to wander. Yeah. Good advice should also include steps for success. One-liner advice is, it's snappy, but if it doesn't include the steps, you're filling in your own perception of how that advice needs to be followed up on. And if you wanted to rely on your own perception, why were you going for advice? This is a person, hopefully, who you trust and respect, who has experience, who has steps for success. Why would they not provide that, as well as the snappy one-liner of, well, just always do this, or just, this is how you solve all of your problems. Don't trust that advice. The advice given does not actually address the problem. I see this a lot in forums, and there's a few things that cause it. Maybe the person asking for advice has not properly assessed the root of their issue and what's actually causing the problem. Maybe the person giving advice didn't read the full context, or they don't know the full context, or there's miscommunication and just missed trains going back and forth. If the advice doesn't actually solve the ask, it's not terribly useful, and at worst, it is going to make the problem worse. The advice is not compassionate. Let me tell you, I didn't find this on a D&D website. I found this on a financial advice website, and they put a very good point that when people are asking for financial advice, you need to consider the context of where they're coming from. And I thought, that seems like good general advice. If you're going to give advice to someone, a new GM, an old GM, someone with a real interpersonal problem, you need to consider where they're coming from. Don't just tell them, oh, that sounds like a TPK situation. You're not actually helping them with that advice. If you're telling them that, well, you should just, kill that character, take away the thing that they're using and taking advantage of. They came to you for advice. You need to do your best by them to help them. That's your responsibility. Again, be nice, don't be terrible people. Advice. Now, you're thinking, this is all very obvious. This is very simple. You're right. These are the bases for good communication between different people. Again, there's more seats. People file in, people file out, you can move on. That's cool. But yeah, what makes advice bad? We think we already know this, but do we identify it in practice? Yeah. I'm going to say certain words a lot. We're going to talk about the words that I'm going to say a lot. Know yourself, know your players. No one knows what kind of GM you are better than you, or has the opportunity to know better than you. Think about who you are as a GM, what kind of games you run, what kind of organization you like to do, how you like to talk to people, what helps you prepare better. Know who your players are, and maybe you just know who these people are, but if you're running a one-off, if you're just meeting for the first time in a public space Session 0 is a great time for that. And if you don't want to have a person conversation, if you feel that that's awkward, there are worksheets on the internet that you can just hand them to fill out and read them later. But please note, you're going to have to talk to those people eventually, probably. RPG games. Let's talk about games. Mindful communication. I would say the word communicate a lot. What I mean specifically is mindful communication. Don't just throw words at each other. Think, be aware, ensure that the person that you're talking to is responding to the things you're saying, make sure they're connecting to you, as I do when I look around at your faces every now and then to see if you're paying attention to me. This is hard. This is work. You need to focus and make sure your brain do thing. Brain do not want to do thing. This is hard. That's why there's a lot of articles about this on the internet. That's why there's classes for this in university or non-university. We're not in Iceland anymore. People got classes outside of university. Sorry, I'm from Iceland. I might mention that every now and then. Read the table. This is part of mindful communication, a little more on the situational awareness side. If your table is pulling back, if they're disconnecting from you, if one person seems to be having trouble getting into it, if they're really paying attention but not interacting, you can identify that from behind the GM seat, and it's up to you to troubleshoot in that moment or maybe in the future. So reading the table. And if your players seem really excited about a thing you mentioned that was kind of offhand, and then afterwards they immediately follow up on it, and you think, oh, my players are so random. I offhandedly mentioned this spooky castle, but it wasn't part of the story, and then they wanted to go to the spooky castle instead of into the abandoned mine. Maybe you should have expected that because they were like, a spooky castle? Can you tell us more about this random NPC? I really want to know about that spooky castle. And they start talking to each other about it. Again, read the table. People are not as random or spontaneous as they or you think they are. They give tells. Pay attention. Don't sit like this behind your GM screen. Sit like this. Sit like this behind your GM screen so you can really see what they're doing, but also, they don't know that you're looking so heavy. Setting expectations. This is so easy. Communicate with people, talk to them. Session 0 is not the only time you set expectations with your party. That's not the only time you talk about, this is the kind of game we're going to play. What kind of adventure do you want to go on? It could be in the moment of, you said you wanted to jump on that grenade? You don't need to roll for this. Your character would know that the backpack you're holding to your chest is not adequate armor to prevent you from taking a serious or life-threatening injury. You could die, or you could be out of the rest of the fight. These are very real consequences. You still want to do the thing? Okay, yeah. Setting expectations, letting your players make informed choices about the things that they're going to be doing, not surprising them with an outcome that they did not expect or anticipate because their brain is not actually the same as your brain and they do think about things differently when they get excited about something. You don't need to trick them. This is important for building trust between you and your table. Communication. Again, just talk to people. Easy as heck. Well, sometimes. Root cause analysis. I might not say this, but I'm like, you need to properly identify the problem. I'm talking about root cause analysis. You need to know what the problem is before you seek advice for it. If you know the source of your problem, all of a sudden, who you need to talk to could change. Who you trust to help you with a problem could change. It helps you more accurately seek advice and more accurately judge if the advice you've been given is something you can use. Again, good advice is not always useful advice, but for my purposes, I might say that something is bad advice if it's not useful. If it doesn't solve the problem, not useful. Done. Easy. Maybe easy? Blank faces, that's fine. We will have a section for questions later. Again, I'm doing something different with my slides. I wanted to make it easier to read. I will ask for feedback at the end. Now we're on to bad advice. All right. So we know what makes advice bad. But when we hear advice, do we think of it as being bad? Do we think of it as being useful? Is it because it's coming from someone we trust, we're gonna weigh it really heavily and be like, who's the guy that runs Critical Role? Was that Matt Mercer? Yeah. Okay, sorry, I'm bad at names. Sometimes I'm bad at names. Matt something. Matt Mercer really knows what he's talking about. And the way he runs his table is the way I want to run my table, ignoring the fact that your table do not play the same way the Critical Role players play. Think about your own situation as well as their situation. Context. Communication, context, important. Maybe context should have been on my recurrent phrases, obviously. And again, everyone feels confident. I'm saying very obvious things, right? We know how to communicate with people. We do it every day. Sorry, I'm just reading my notes. I want to make sure I tell you things that are both accurate and helpful. And I'm nervous. Sorry. It took about 20 minutes for the nerves to kick in. Yeah. I'm going to go through examples of my favorite bad advices. They are not, words not bad. Maybe it's still helpful advice. You just need to vet and look at it. The situations that I see this advice given in are usually bad. And that's part of what we're going to talk about. And also, maybe how you can better use the bad advice that given. Because tools in toolbox, always helpful. Caveman talking more useful or not as useful? Again, blurry faces, it's fine. I'm going to ask you questions though, so please answer them. Just be creative. Have you heard this advice before? Has someone told you this? I see some nods, excellent. Did you think it was helpful? Did you think it was useful? I see some nods, I see some shakes, I see... Story time. The whole reason I submitted this panel to MAGFest is because I heard this one too many times and I was angry about it. I've heard this from game developers, game writers, scenario writers, other DMs, players who are not DMs, players that are DMs, volunteers brought into a con hired by the gaming company specifically to teach new GMs or DMs or fate masters or storytellers or whatever how to run their particular individual game. Hear this everywhere. Very snappy one-liner. What does creativity mean? What does it mean to be creative? What steps are you then given to be creative? Do you know how to follow up on this? Advice like this relies on your personal perception of what the key words mean. And I've found, in follow-up with the people who provide just be creative as the advice, usually what they mean is to be flexible. Because creativity is relying on, well, making things that maybe my players have never seen. And if my players have never seen it, have I seen it? Am I ready to completely write my own scenario? Not necessarily if you're a new GM. And there's nothing wrong with running pre-made scenarios. Seeing something that someone else has written gives you a lot of experience on the flow of an adventure, how stat blocks can be used. Always needing to just make up your own thing, that's really, really hard. But if the way you like to play, yeah, just do the thing. You know what kind of GM you are, be your own GM. Yeah, usually they need to be flexible. I do not get this. This makes me sad. Again, mostly because there are no steps for follow-up. Some of you said you had been to the Goblins and Growlers panel yesterday. More people have walked in. Who went to the Goblins and Growlers panel? Hey, nice, okay. There was one piece of advice that really stuck out with me when one of the panelists said it, and that was, be confident. And I thought, I've been in this panel for about 40 minutes at this point. I like the way advice is being provided. I trust the panelists, the way they talk about gaming, the way they provide examples, I'm in. Be confident. You're right. That's great advice for a GM. And then I went, I'm running a panel on advice. And what they're talking about is the way being confident can benefit your game and your scenario. They are not telling you what confidence is, how to show confidence. Maybe this isn't as good of advice as I thought, because I'm thinking in my head, I know what confidence is, but my perception of confidence might not be the same as what their perception of confidence is. So, good, specific advice. Again, when you trust someone, you're more likely to listen to that advice, even if it's not actually gonna give you follow-upable steps. These are just things to think about. But once you've thought about it, you can be like, hey, dear goblins and growlers, you said be confident, and I don't know what steps to take for that. Ask people questions. They might answer. We're a friendly community, tabletop gaming folks. We've got some seats in the front if you guys want to come sit down. You don't have to, though. I was like, questions? And I was like, no, not question time, sorry. Never say no. Has someone told you this?
Yes.
Have you heard this advice?
Yeah.
Did you think it was helpful? Walter, always say yes. I mean, if you heard that also. Did you think it was helpful? Do you think it was good advice? I see some head shakes. I see sometimes this is absolute advice. Absolute advice, always do things. Maybe.
It's good for improv and for interpersonal things.
Yeah, all advice have context. Sometimes good, sometimes bad. When you read that top 10 list of things best GM always do, sometimes they give context, but sometimes it's just a list with things like this. Again, generally when people say no, especially in response to a foreign query of, my players keep saying they want to do impossible things, or they want to do this, but it doesn't fit with the story or the character, and it's like, don't say no, be flexible. Get in, let them do their thing. What people generally mean is, do not say no to a player idea just because it wasn't something you thought of or prepared for. It does not mean never say no, even if the request is impossible. But, as I said earlier, depends on your priorities, depends on the type of game you want to run. If it's a really wacky, surreal game, and your player that fell off the side of a cliff is like, can I flap my arms really hard and see if that keeps me from falling? You know what kind of game this is, and if that is not a thing that is possible, you can't say no. But you can also say, what exactly is your goal here? So you can guide them through a different choice. Like, well, I don't want to fall. And it's like, okay, we can try to do some extended tests to grab onto the side of the mountain. If you have pythons, you get advantage or something like that. You can say, convince me. Again, depending on the type of game that you're running, it's like, your character, who is a barbarian, wants to access the library card system of the archaic library. What exact skill are they going to use? Because I don't know if I understand exactly what you're trying to do. I don't like this, but I do like don't say no out of hand. This is part of communication. Be thoughtful when interacting with your players. It's their story too. Story, we're gonna get to the word story, and I'm gonna regret saying it right now, but it's their game also. This is a game. We wanna have fun. If you don't wanna have fun, maybe play a game. That's an opinion. Most people's opinions are terrible, mine included. Again, judge with your brain. That's what these tools are for. Put them in your toolbox for human interaction. Don't bother to prepare. Oh man. Who's heard this? I saw some reactions in the front row. Did you think it was helpful? I see some handshakes. I didn't actually see anyone nod, which I'm glad. Don't bother to prepare. If someone tells you, XGM on the internet never prepares and their games are always great, this person is either lying, maybe to up their GM cred. Oh, so cool, I never prepare. They don't think the things they're doing are preparation, so they don't frame it in that context. Not helpful, but yeah. Or they are an exceedingly experienced GM. They have a lot of knowledge from running different games. They've read a lot of supplements. Wherever you go, they can pull something they've experienced in the past. This is part of why I liked the Goblins and Growlers panel yesterday, because one of the panelist GMs said, I don't do a lot of preparation. This is because I've been doing this for a long time. I have a catalog of small adventure seeds that I can just pull out of my brain. That sets up the frame of who this is going to be useful for and who it's not going to be useful for. This is useful for people who are very good at extemporaneous thinking. I don't need to prepare either. Or I've done a certain type of pre-preparation I've read a lot of supplements, I've read all the world building, I watch The Witcher, I've watched the Shannara on Netflix, I watch a lot of Netflix, so I have a lot of stories and characters that I can just pull, and that's fine, like if that's the way you want to do it. But for a new GM who has never done anything, who maybe isn't up on the rules, this is such bad advice. My players, I wrote this really long campaign and I had it really specifically set up, and my players just keep going in directions I did not prepare for. Don't bother to prepare, you just always waste your time. Just don't say that, don't tell people that. Follow-up, Goblins and Growlers, what she said was, what helps when you have players that don't want to follow a specific thing, maybe they... Was that me? Oh, okay. Lost my sorry. Thanks, Dave. I mean, have players that don't want to follow along with the story, or they don't want to feel too constrained. The good thing to do is write small adventure seed, like the step one, like here's a spooky forest you could go into, here is a town, here is an assortment of things, and when you pick one, you've already written essentially session one. You know what direction you're interested in going. Now you can write more. You don't do a whole bunch of wasted work. Now you've got other plot seeds ready for the future. No work wasted. What I like to do is, and I swear I had this as an example in my panel before I saw Goblins and Growlers yesterday, I didn't talk about it. If you write a big spooky castle, or a really specific story, and you don't have anything else prepared, and your players decide that, oh, that abandoned mine that this random kobold was talking about in Draconic sounds really cool. Your labyrinth spooky castle is now in an abandoned mine. They're not going to know that you weren't already ready for that. Be confident is mostly, we're going to explain be confident, it's mostly don't show thing on face, but also saying, yeah, I was totally ready for that. Find a person that you identify as confident, either in TV or in your life. You're like, that's a confident person, I want to be like them. Just start using their mannerisms. Now you look like a confident person, and if you do it enough, your brain is going to say, we're a confident person now. We're going to build neural networks to more readily be a confident person, and then you know what? Now you're actually a confident person. Fake it till you make it. That's how practically that works. Again, snappy one-liner advice. Unless you explain, then okay. A story is the most important thing. Who's heard this advice? Decent number of people. Did you think it was helpful? You're allowed to say yes if you genuinely thought it was helpful. I'm not here to judge you. I just want to know about your life experiences and have you thinking about things that have happened to you in the past. A lot of this breaks down into what does the word story mean? If you're here to write a story, you might want to write fan fiction. Or normal fiction, it doesn't have to be normal fiction. You want to write a book. That's okay. The main thing is, your D&D game isn't a story based on my operant definitions of what story is. It is a setting or scenario. And setting or scenario can be important. It depends on your priorities, your table's priorities. Writing the table. Maybe that's important. Do they care most about where this adventure takes place? Is it very important that it's in Eberron because everyone has Eberron backstories? Is it important that your game, Shadowrun, takes place in Chicago because everyone's dealing with blood spirits? That depends. And it's not a story because the ending is not predetermined and the choices that are made are not predetermined. And do you really want to give your players a script and get mad at them when you don't follow the script of your expectations? Maybe your players want that, that's fine. Tell the play. It's okay. But there's no fixed ending. You can run the same scenario multiple times and it will not end the same way. That's why I do not like this. But setting can be important. Scenario can be important. These are things we talk about in session 0. Or as you're going through on the game and your players say, maybe this isn't going how I thought it would go. And that's fine. Communication, important. Mindful communication, important. Who's heard this? Do you think this is helpful advice? Now people are confident about saying yes.
You use some action steps.
It's fine. Wait, are you raising your hand because you have a question?
I have a comment on it.
Can I wait until the question section?
Sure.
Awesome, thank you. We're gonna have plenty of time for questions. This depends on priorities. Is it really gonna break your game if you guys stop to check how a rule works? You as the GM and your players as players know this better than anyone on the internet. Generally when this advice is given, it's more of reassuring someone that, it's your table. The developers aren't going to come to your house and hit you with the book and say, we wrote a rule for this. The issue is generally context. If in your game you're all new and you are all trying to learn a new rule set, going a little slow, referencing the book, seeing if a rule exists for the thing that you're doing. New edition just came out, the hacking rules in Shadowrun are different. We do want to make sure we do it right in the future, so we're going to take a little bit of time to review it. That's also okay. Word not bad. Sometimes flippant context bad. Gameplay is more important than rules. That depends on your priority as a table of players. And the only person who can judge that is you. Is it okay to not follow the rules? Absolutely. Is it okay to stop and reference the rule? Also fine. Is it okay to nitpick and say, well, technically it kind of says it like this, but there's no specific rule, but the developer on a forum said, maybe that's okay too. This is your table of friends, and sometimes you just want to chat and talk about the things that you've experienced in your life. Everything is fine. Whatever choices you make are probably the best choices for you and your table. You just have to assess that with tools and toolbox and knowledge of how communication communicate. Who's heard this one? I heard a sigh, but I don't know if that's a yes. Do you think this is useful advice?
Oh, no.
They're your kids.
So, when I have heard this advice in the past, treat your players like they are children usually translates to treat your players like they are idiots. And that, I think, is not good advice. Players can't solve the simplest of puzzles. And so maybe they don't have the right contextual framing to do a puzzle today. Maybe they thought they were going to go into combat, and they're not good extemporaneous thinkers. Give them some hints. When I was going through this panel with someone else, they said, oh yeah, I've heard this in the context of help them grow, guide the choices that they make. And I'm like, the difference in that is a very small word. Treat the players like they are your children. Very different. You don't want to treat your children like they're idiots. They're small and growing. They have a frame of knowledge that's this big. They do not have access to your notebook of this is exactly how the campaign, these are all blank pages, this is how the campaign is going to play out. And it's obvious that at the end of this castle, there's going to be a ring and it's important, and they don't even look at it because they're like, everything in this castle has been cursed. I don't want to pick up the cursed ring. And you're like, why can't you see into my brain? We are different humans, brains not connected. Even though I said earlier, GMs kind of share the same brain. That's why you see a lot of the same advice, roll on the internet. Different human. In individual settings, do not share same brain. They don't know what's in your head. That's why being confident is so easy, because even though you're going, ah! You can be like, yes. Yes, there is a hidden door in this mind. Let me write something. Wait, hold on. Let me go watch an episode of The Witcher. I haven't watched The Witcher, I'm sorry. I'm going to reference it every now and then, though, because the song is catchy. And someone posted a meme on Twitter that was toss a Kofi to your Witcher, and I'm like, oh, that's really funny. The things I think are funny. All right. Medium advice. Treat players like your children. Nurture their growth. Offer them appropriate context. Scaffolding for skills. If you don't know what scaffolding is, we might get to that later. All right. Who's heard this? Yeah, Staples. It's in every RPG core book, and also like master books that are separate from the ones that players can read. You think this is helpful? Maybe? Yeah. And that's about how I feel about it. This is given in the context of you are the arbitrator and you are the final word. Caveat, you need to be thoughtful. You need to be in communication with the people. When I see this thrown around in forums, it is very often in GM versus player mentality conversations. I'm here to ruin the player's day. Depending on the game system you're playing, maybe that's the thing, but that's setting expectations. If we're in a versus situation, I brought this up to someone and they said, why wouldn't you just play Sword Coast Online? Is that what it's called? Thank you, Sword Coast Legends. Wrong. I haven't played the game. Well, yeah, that. You haven't. Anyway, Sword Coast. You can find it somewhere. You're setting up dungeons to ruin the NPC's day, computer robots. Do you want to ruin your friend's day? Are you a GM to be an authority to rule over these other people's fun? Are you a dictator? Is it the way you said because you said that, rules be damned, fun be damned, stop arguing with me? This kind of situation? That is when I think this advice is the least helpful. But it is also the most common, flippantly offered advice I see. Just kill the player. Just take away their shiny toy. Just tell them XYZ. Your rule is law. You're in charge. Serious moment. We're here to be thoughtful. We're here to have fun. For us as game masters, for our players as players, we just want to have a good time. Hopefully. Again, I'm not here to judge you if your game is player versus GM. There are systems for that. And if your players really enjoy being in a versus situation, you just need to make sure everyone's on the same page when you're making that decision. Always listen to your players. Who's heard this? I have never seen this on a forum, so some of you raise your hands. You got good friends, maybe. Who thought this was helpful? Now, there's two sides to this, as there are with everything. It is not always do what your player says. That's not what this says. Listen. And for the purposes of our conversation, we've talked about communication, which is listening as well. Listen to what they say. They're giving you feedback in everything that they do. That's advice I like. Again, if you're filling in the blank of listen means do what they say, please don't do that. Well, make your own decisions. You don't have to do what I tell you. Again, you don't know who I am. Be suspicious of the advice I'm giving you. Vet it in your brain. Make decisions. All right, yeah. I'm gonna flip to the notes that I have for this section because it's a little complicated. Now, you've heard a lot of different kinds of advice. You have received advice from different places, and you've vetted it, thought about it, you've decided who you trust. But if you only go to one place for advice, which it can be a habit, I've got a forum that I like, that's the only place I go to for advice. That means you're getting the same thoughts, the same ideas, the same advice over and over. And maybe it's advice that you already would have thought of yourself. So let's find some varying backgrounds, varying viewpoints. My academic background is in research and experimental psychology. The things that I like to do are literature reviews, which means I do a lot of information seeking, not necessarily specifically advice seeking, but information seeking and advice seeking are not terribly different. You want to find a source that you can trust, maybe independently verify their experience. You want to weigh appropriately the advice you're being given. You want to know that who or what, if it's a blog, can articulate the ideas that they have clearly, because people who are successful are not always good at explaining why they are successful. Humans, in general, are very, very bad at identifying what caused our behavior, let alone what caused someone else's behavior, because brain doing many things cannot assign workload to specific things unless you say, listen up, brain, I really need you to focus on thing. And then you have to convince your brain to do the thing. Being aware that your brain does that helps you circumvent your brain doing that. There's information on the internet about that. Feel free to look it up. Just properly vet your sources. Yeah, people successful, not always good at telling you why successful. Also, AGM that is very good, whose Twitch stream or podcast you really like listening to, may not be able to give good advice because they do not know why they're being successful. They just have a lot of experience. They haven't thought about the act of GMing. They haven't thought about why they make choice, why players make choice, that kind of thing. And people who aren't GMs might be able to give you great advice that you can use for GMing. I said earlier, I got something off a financial website, and if your issue is like an interpersonal issue, you don't have to go to other GMs for that. You could go to people that I'm going to talk about in the rest of the slide. What am I doing? I got a rules question. There's a lot of resources for rules questions. Official FAQ and errata is a great place to go. You don't have to, you can talk to other people, it's up to you. But if it's something that's not clear in the book, and you Google, this is problem, this is game, hopefully the response will come up. You're probably not the first person to have whatever X problem is. Unless you're very creative with the problems that you have. Or you have very specific rules issues. Maybe the FAQ or errata does not exist. That's okay. There's probably an online forum where someone said, I have a problem and I cannot find anything in any of the resources. Someone direct me to thing. You don't even have to type the ask. Someone else has thought of it. Oh, but Tora, you said online forums are full of garbage. It's true, you still need to vet the advice. But the benefit of an online forum is it could be like Board Game Geek, where the developers will tune in and provide information and advice and collect information so they can prepare an FAQ and errata. You can weigh that as you deem appropriate. Oh no, there's no one seems to have asked a specific thing on the internet. Well, you can go to your game-specific subreddit or Facebook page, but Tora, you said people's opinions are garbage. Vet the advice, easy peasy. And the great thing about Reddit, Facebook, online forums, whatever you have, they will generally, because they want to show that they have authority and they know what they're talking about, reference the page or rule or supplement book they're drawing their example from. You can independently vet it that way, and then they saved you some work. They can also tell you, listen up, idiot, it's on page 365 of the official core rulebook. How could you miss it? But then that's not actually the thing that you were looking for, so. But maybe you've got general questions. I just want to generally improve as a GM. I want to find not commonly played hidden gems, source books, or a new app for a dice roller. Blogs, podcasts, YouTube, archived information sources are pretty great for this, but again, vet. Number of subscribers, I do not think is an appropriate vetting mechanic, but Decide what your favorite thing is. My favorite part of this is find the blog of someone who runs RPGs and online games. Find a source book for a game you've never heard of. Find a YouTube channel from your favorite Twitch GM's special guest one week. Broaden your outlook. Listen to different people. Give yourself as much to work with as possible. Think about different things that different people with different backgrounds who play different games say. You want to fake being creative? Let's play an adventure out of the Vivisection sourcebook in My Dark Heresy game, or D&D. It switches to fantasy fairly easily. Bring broad amounts of information. I see nods, that's good. Moving on. If you have an interpersonal issue, I'm having issues dealing with a person, they are always looking at their phone, they're always doing XYZ, maybe you should look at a psychology resource. Again, I'm biased, I got a psychology background, but something like an online psychology publication, something that is sourced by the APA, it's already vetted by someone who has experience in that word hard. Thank you. Always got my back. So it takes a little bit of strain off of trying to find out if something is good and trustworthy, and it will give you a different background. If you need to know about behavior modification, communication, psychology resources are very helpful. But if you do not like the psychology resources, business sources, DM to player relationship is not super different from like a manager working with a team. So you can look at team communication. Business resources are great for troubleshooting, problem analysis, big group communication, encouraging people who do not speak to speak. Harvard Business Review is not the only one you need to look at. I just reference them a lot, and you get like 3 free articles a month unless you subscribe, and you get 4? Question mark? I don't subscribe, obviously. Different viewpoint, not necessarily game viewpoint, but it's not a game-specific problem, it's a human problem. Maybe. Parenting science. We talked about treating your players like children. If your players often get stuck in a crossroad or have trouble making decisions, you can look up appropriate autonomy granting or how to frame decisions so that your toddler can feel empowered to make a choice. Your players are giving you the feedback that you railroad an awful lot and they're not super into that. Maybe look up parenting styles and the differences between authoritarian and authoritative parenting so you can identify your own behaviors. Again, this is a tool, help you identify things about yourself, communicate with your players or your children. Your players that you treat like your children. And they also provide great resources for troubleshooting with someone who's acting out, and you can assess, are they giving me toddler behavior acting out? Are they giving me teenager behavior acting out? Are we just having a communication problem? Good things to read. I don't have a specific one on here because I usually just Google parenting problem or appropriate autonomy granting, because when I did psychology, child development was a thing we did, and appropriate autonomy granting was a big deal. These are both things. And that's what I had. Who has questions? Someone in the back was holding one, but are you still here?
You kind of addressed it as soon as I
Oh.
Yeah, it had to do with...
Excellent. Well, questions? Feel free to ask. No questions? I am amazing or scary, and everyone is afraid of me. Either way, we've got about 5 minutes then if there are no questions. What is the best? Oh, sorry, go ahead.
What would you do for a Klondike bar?
Give my horrible, terrible opinion. Mostly say, don't tell people to just be creative. What does that even mean? All right. Topic appropriate questions, or the best advice you've been given, the best place you found as a resource for advice. I forgot to talk about one thing, and that was your parents, your grandparents, people you know have also got lots of experience in dealing with other people, and if you have a problem and you're like, I just can't talk to this person, they might know. I got a lot of really good advice talking to my martial arts instructor, because he knows what people act like when they feel cornered, when they feel powerless, so I can identify those behaviors a little more effectively and maybe back off. People who you talk to face-to-face, game store owner, your dentist, your hairdresser, they're less likely to give you